Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Patch 9.2 has gotten yet another encrypted build ready to be released. So far that's 2 encrypted builds which hopefully we'll get to see this week. And with a brand new year and a new patch on the horizon, we should be getting a new expansion announcement hopefully sometime soon. Today I want to discuss what I would want to see from the future expansion, no matter what the theme may be. Not necessarily talking about the future story or where we might be leveling in or some of the characters we may be able to meet. Instead, this video is going to list things I would want to see, like in which direction should the evolution of our classes go, what kind of content should they add in the future, should there be borrowed power systems going forward, and all the important things that really make the expansion. But before we get into that list, most of you guys watching these videos are still not subscribed. And if you watch these videos anyway, you might as well subscribe as well as hit the bell if you enjoy discussion videos like these or future WoW 9.2 updates or even future WoW expansion updates. First of all, I want to highlight the things that I enjoyed when it comes to Shadowlands. Some of the systems or features that I enjoyed that I'm hoping that make it into the next expansion. While they're not live yet, the tier sets have been very enjoyable to play with again. Both the gameplay bonuses of the 2-piece and 4-piece for every single spec, but also how our classes look visually different and distinct from one another. I prefer this much more than the Azerite gear from BFA, where every single rogue, demon hunter, druid, and monk all look the same. I love how they made professions more important. There's a lot more consumables to purchase from the auction house, all the different ways to augment your character, and it really makes you feel like you're prepping to go into a raid. Although I do wish the prices weren't nearly as high. I like all the creative new abilities we got when it comes to Covenant abilities for every single class. I enjoyed Torghast with all the unique powers that could change the way your class played in a closed off environment. I like how gear in PvP became more important, so you could truly itemize your character in the best way you see fit. Not necessarily the one-shots that came with some of the PvP gear. I like the idea behind legendaries and their effects, how they can create unique builds or play into niche playstyles. And I very much enjoyed Legion Time Walking and the Mage Tower and how they were able to bring that back from the Legion expansion. Every one of these features I enjoyed to some capacity, however I would want them to be changed a little bit heading forward into whatever the next expansion may be. Starting off with class design. Going forward, I feel like we should be less about borrowed powers and more about class design and advancing that class design going forward. For example, grab all the classes in Shadowlands minus the Covenant abilities and legendaries and grow our classes. In the past, this would normally mean adding new class abilities or passives that change the focus or the direction that the class went. In some ways, the current Covenant abilities already do that. Our classes are a picture with one puzzle missing, but we get to choose which of these Covenant abilities we want to fill that puzzle piece. Going forward, Blizzard would need to figure out which direction should classes go and how they should evolve going forward to advance on the gameplay that's already been developed. However, if it doesn't feel like there's a lot of room for growth, a redesign might need to be in order. The last class that got a redesign was the Shadow Priest heading into Shadowlands. It was left pretty broken and bare bones after it got stripped of all its Azerite gear and the Heart of Azeroth. But they took the design of the Shadow Priest and made it something more comprehensible by changing its mastery in the focus and the gameplay. Some players liked the redesign while others didn't, but either way the redesign left the spec at least whole and complete, and now it has room to grow somewhere forward. So if Blizzard can't really figure out a direction which a class should go into, maybe a redesign for the next expansion might be exactly what it needs. Besides class gameplay, I also would want to see a more competitive talent trees. In my free time, I play a lot of alts, and with all the different classes that I play, I noticed that many of their talents don't have too much competition in individual rows. Like in a whole row, there will be one talent that's best in slot for dungeons, raids, and PvP, no questions asked. I would either love to see the talents that are underperforming in the row replaced with something better, or simply get tuned and buffed so that the choice of talents becomes a lot harder to make as a player. Overall, I hope that there's going to be a lot of work going into trying to make our classes play as best as they humanly can. It doesn't even matter how good the content of a potential expansion could be. If our classes, which are an extension of ourselves, aren't really all that fun to play with, then experiencing the content through that extension of ourselves just simply won't be nearly as fun. Next thing we could talk about heading forward is the gearing in the next expansion. I would love to see less RNG drops from dungeons and raids, like sockets. That's still a component that's completely RNG, and yes, you can grind out for sockets through reputations, but in the future I would love to see some pre-planned sockets on certain items, or simply utilizing professions to be able to add sockets on specific pieces. I would love to see the return of a Valor vendor as a bad luck protection when it comes to PvE content. Don't get me wrong, I'll run Plaguefall 20 times over just for that Vile Trinket, But if I don't get my vial after that many runs, it would be nice to take the valor accumulated from all those dungeon runs and to be able to straight up buy the trinket that I need for my character. I feel like the idea behind upgrading already existing gear in your bags with valor and honor is not a bad idea, just wish there weren't as many ranks or limitations like hitting certain Mythic Plus milestones to be able to upgrade gear with valor. Let's also talk about systems going forward. For the last few expansions, we had the artifact weapon systems of Legion, the Azurite, the Heart of Azeroth, and the Legendary Cloak and Corruptions of Battle for Azeroth, as well as the Shadowlands legendaries, now tier sets, conduits, and soulbinds, as well as the Covenant abilities. That is a lot of systems for us to play with for 3 expansions in a row. I think the only system out of these that I really enjoy is the idea that tier sets are returning. But I don't think borrowed power should completely disappear either. Just think of it. Through the Covenant system, we got to play our classes and specs in 4 different ways based on the Covenant that we pick. Warriors wouldn't be as deadly as they are with the Kyrian Bastion Spear in PvP, pinning enemies to the ground where they have nowhere to go. Or the uniqueness of the Necrolord Warrior and the banner gameplay where you share a buff with your allies. How the Ventier were able to transform your Execute into a Condemn, turning a finisher ability into also an opener ability. But don't forget the earth-shattering damage of the Ancient Aftershock from the Night Fae and the amount of raw damage that brought. What I'm trying to say is, Covenant abilities created creative abilities for our classes to play with, and taking away Convoke from Cat Druids is gonna feel weird in the next expansion. I don't necessarily want more borrowed powers going forward for the next expansion, but I think there needs to be some sort of an outlet of creativity where devs can come up with unique, creative, and even wacky class abilities or potential future tier sets. So I'm hoping to keep some kind of like a Torghast style system, some sort of a separate instance that isn't part of the endgame content, where you have creative new abilities and wacky powers to play with in order to give devs ideas of some of these playstyles that are players' favorite that could potentially become part of the class-based gameplay. And that's where I think borrowed powers belong in. Not that I want our class to have borrowed powers for the endgame content of dungeons, raids, and PvP, but having some sort of an instance with some playable borrowed powers for us to mess with might be a nice idea going forward. And then there's the content. Of course, there's the raids and the dungeons, and I can't really comment much on here. I keep playing World of Warcraft for the raids and dungeons. Not every single raid fight is my favorite, not every single dungeon encounter is the best, but I enjoy that Blizzard does these, and I think that's their strength, creating new affixes for Mythic Pluses, or finding new ways to challenge players in dungeon environments. Instead, let's talk about other content they should add. With the Mage Tower returning for the Legion time walking, a lot of players find themselves drawn to the Mage Tower. Something that's challenging or difficult that's not necessarily part of the end game, something you have cosmetics or even mounts to obtain from. More content like this that isn't necessarily needed or mandatory, but is an optional activity, maybe with a bit of a reward for like a player challenge of sorts, maybe one for a group of players in fact. I love the idea of mega dungeons like Tezavesh, Karazhan, all of them were awesome, and I hope they continue making more mega dungeons going forward. I would love to see more PvP brawls and more ideas for PvP brawls. I love how much effort they're putting into the solo queue mode for patch 9.2, and I hope they continue adding more effort like this for future modes that could potentially become part of the everyday game modes for World of Warcraft PvP. It would also be awesome to add a way for players to have some sort of PvP progression through not only arenas and battlegrounds, but rather also through world PvP, like a way for you to obtain a lot of conquest and honor and gear yourself out just from fighting other players in the open world. But that's going to be my list of all the things I would want to see done right for the next expansion of World of Warcraft, whatever the expansion story or theme may be. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the list, or what would you do differently heading forward to the next expansion? Class design, borrowed powers, should they have them, should they not? What should continue in the next expansion and what shouldn't? If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, I would very much appreciate it. As always, in the description of every single video, there's a link to the Dalaran community channel Discord. That's probably the best place to chat with the rest of the members of the community, but also to message me directly. DM's always open. Thank you all so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, I'll see all of you in another video.